Now.
Quality control plays a crucial role in ensuring accuracy, reliability, and integrity in forensic science. It encompasses various methodologies and processes aimed at maintaining high standards and minimizing errors in forensic analysis. Today, we have the privilege of exploring this topic in depth through the insights of our esteemed speaker on the topic quality control in forensic science. Prayer is not asking God to do what you want, but it is asking God to enable you to do what He wants. With these thoughts, we will begin this expert lecture with the prayer song rendered by the college choir.
You made the mountains and the sea, measured out the universe, and you made me. Echoes of the voice that called the words to me, reach throughout the ages and now speak to me. You're my creator King. You who made the valleys and the skies, displayed your love on far horizons and before my eyes. You who lit the stars and set the dawn in time, called them all by name, and now you whisper mine. You're my creator King. And who am I that you are mindful of me? And who am I that you sent your love on me? And who am I that you are mindful of me? And who am I that you sent your love on me? You're my creator King.
Good morning, everyone. A hearty welcome to our esteemed guest, Ms. Krishnendu Sreekumar, for taking out time to share her expertise. We welcome you, ma'am. I also welcome Mr. Don Cairo, Coordinator of Department of Forensic Science, and the faculty members to this session. A cordial welcome to the students of 6th semester BSc and MSc Forensic Science to this session. It is an honor to present today's distinguished speaker for our expert lecture series. We are delighted to welcome Ms. Krishnendu Sreekumar, Quality Control Assistant in Xyfil Ltd in Preston, London, for the expert lecture series. Krishnendu Sreekumar is a highly qualified quality control assistant currently employed by one of the finest cosmetic product manufacturers in the United Kingdom, that is Xyfil Ltd. While she currently resides in Preston, Krishnendu completed her bachelor's in year 2020 from the well-reputed Jane Deemed to be University before she moved to abroad to pursue her master's in forensic science. She pursued her master's from one of the most renowned universities in the United Kingdom, that is University of Strathclyde. With utmost dedication and perseverance, Miss Krishnendu attained her master's securing a grade of distinction. She was a brilliant student. She took a step forward, grabbing any opportunity she could to improve her skills and elevate her scientific understanding of the world of forensics. In her undergraduate years, she worked as a summer intern in 2018 with the District Crime Records Bureau, specialized in forensic fingerprinting and the photography division. The following year, she continued her quest for knowledge and took up an internship with the Chief Chemical Examiner's Laboratory, focusing on forensic toxicology, narcotics, and forensic serology division. After her exceptional showing of academics and real-world skills, she was taken in by Xyfil Ltd as a manufacturing laboratory technician. Wasting no time and proving her excellence, Ms. Krishnendu rose through her ranks and is now a quality control assistant for Xyfil Ltd, displaying her unique set of skills and exquisite knowledge that she carries with the charm. In her professional circle, she is well known for her intricate set of adroitness that features technical knowledge, research, and development competence, as well as her adept knowledge on test procedures. Without a doubt, Ms. and perseverance that continues to prove its eminence in the world of forensic and quality control. We are truly privileged to have ma'am among us today to deliver the expert lecture. Without further ado, I request ma'am to address the gathering.
Hi everyone, good morning, and thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It's just a short presentation I have today. So I would like it to be more of an interactive session because if I'm the only one talking, I'll get really nervous. So I'll just share my screen. So before I start, I just want to thank Donso and his team for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to speak to you guys today. Thank you so much, sir. So I'll just share my screen now. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Hi. So when I was putting this presentation together yesterday, I thought I will start with a brief introduction about what I do and myself and how it relates to quality control, and then relating that to the entire field of forensic science. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is a lot of R&D work, and I currently work with the pharmaceutical company called Xyfil Ltd, and we manufacture anywhere from cosmetic products, CBD products, as well as e-liquid products. So whatever is made in the laboratory is also tested in-house, and all of the quality control parameters are done in-house before it's released from the laboratory. So with that, I would just like to start by defining what quality means, because quality is more of a practice. It's not something that you can learn from a textbook, right? So if there is a standard and something meets that standard, I would say it's of adequate quality. And if something surpasses that standard, it's of really excellent quality. And if something does not meet that standard, it is of poor quality. So the word quality control is a way to meet a standard, right? So how do we meet a standard? How does a customer or a consumer or a client know that this particular laboratory meets the standard? We can meet standards by looking at accreditations, or for example, if I know that a certain lab works in compliance with a certain standard, that lab is good in its quality control. So with accreditations, you can understand that there are different accreditation bodies for different countries. For example, in the UK forensic science, the Chartered Society is a big accreditation body, whereas in India, I believe the ABL is an accreditation body that gives accreditation to laboratories. And with standards, I would say, if you guys are familiar with ISO standards, so if I know that a laboratory works in compliance with a certain ISO standard, for example, ISO 9001, that that laboratory is reliable for me to dispatch my samples to for testing. So this can either be in a GMP laboratory setting, or the same can be applied to a forensic science setting as well, right? So if the private client or the court of law wants the sample to be analyzed from a laboratory, they would need that trust that this laboratory has got some accreditation and they work in compliance with certain standards. So I would say that quality control is sort of a boat to understanding and establishing a robust protocol over time. So before that, I just want to clarify QA versus QC. So are they related? Are they not related? Yes, they are related, very closely related. In fact, you cannot have one without the other, but they are not quite the same thing. When I say QA, which is quality assurance, what I mean to say is that it relates to certain processes and procedures, whereas QC relates to products and particular services. So, in other words, I can say that QA is a very proactive approach, whereas QC is a very reactive approach. So, in simpler terms, think of QA as like a final stamp, right? And QC is all the little things that you can do to achieve that final stamp, if that makes sense. So on the next slide, I have a bunch of different scenarios, and I would like for some volunteers to tell me whether you think this is a QA procedure or a QC procedure. So let's start with the first, which is creating standard operating protocols. Do you think that's a QA procedure or a QC procedure? Anyone?
QA procedure.
Yeah, that's correct. So creating SOPs is a QA procedure, whereas ensuring you're actually following the SOP is a QC procedure, if that makes sense. The next one is analysis. Do you think that's a QA procedure?
Okay.
So calibrating instrument before analysis is a QC procedure. However, if you have a timetable that every week you should calibrate the instrument, or twice a week, or every time you use the instrument, it should be calibrated, that is the QA procedure, right? So actually performing the calibration will be a QC procedure. So let's move on to the next one. Providing training to scientists and analysts. Do you think that's a QA or a QC procedure?
Ma'am, is it a QA procedure?
Yes, it is a QA procedure. What about conducting regular audits? Is that QA or QC?
QC.
So that would be a QA procedure because it's a bigger procedure and a bigger process. So actually performing the audit will be a QC procedure. Does that make sense? What about standardizing reagents before an analysis? Do you think that's QA or QC?
QC.
Yes, so that would be a QC procedure. So if you look at the pattern here, QA procedures are basically written manuals, training procedures, etc. Whereas QC procedures is what you perform every day in the lab, day to day, that ensures that your results are accurate and reliable, right? So then how can we relate this to a forensic setting? You might hear a lot about QC and QA in a GMP laboratory. However, I think it's equally important. In fact, I think it's more important in a forensic setting, right? Because in a forensic laboratory, you are looking for four main things. The number one is sample integrity. Number two is sample preservation. You want to preserve as much as you want, as much as you can of the original sample, right? Number three is the accuracy and the reliability of the result. And number 4 would be the reproducibility, right? So, like I said before, QC parameters can really provide a sort of robustness to all of these things to be achieved, right? So when you have QC parameters in place, you can ensure that all of these aims are met and all of these goals are met. So another thing that I would want to say is that a lot of QC procedures come from human errors, and it is a continuous improvement of sorts. For example, if there is a laboratory and there is a fridge that you store all the samples in, maybe somebody forgot to switch on that fridge overnight, right? And because of that, all the samples got degraded and all of the reagents were not stored in the right temperature, and this led to a big loss in the business. So that is what we call a QC failure. That is a failure point. However, from that point, there was a QC parameter set in place to ensure that the fridge is always kept on overnight, right? So how can we achieve that QC parameter? We can achieve it in the terms of logs or checklists or reminders. So, little things that you do here and there that in the long run ensure that these mistakes are not repeated. So QC is a continuous improvement process, and a lot of QC parameters come because of human errors. So when I say quality in a laboratory, I would say it encompasses these 4 main things. Number 1 is understanding that scientific methods are not static. It is ever changing. Today's method may not be tomorrow's method, and that is why a part of good quality assurance is to ensure that you are up to date with all of the scientific literature and all of the scientific methods that are invalidated, methods that are newly validated, etc. So to put in that research development and be updated on literature is one way of ensuring good quality control or good quality assurance. The second one is creating easy to understand and unbiased reports. This is extremely important, especially in a forensic setting, because you will be presenting your findings to a third party that does not have the kind of scientific knowledge that you do. So for traceability and transparency purpose, it is kind of the competency of the analyst to be able to communicate this in what we say layman's terms without losing its meaning. So that's one way of assuring quality as well. The third way is equipment quality. Now, when I say equipment quality, I don't mean that we need the most expensive equipment or the fanciest or most sophisticated equipment. I mean to say is equipment maintenance in a way that we can maximize the potential of the equipment that we already have. Right? So think of it this way. If we have 2 equipments that both are the same model, the same specification, and the same product really, but one is sitting on a bench collecting dust and the other one has been properly calibrated, properly maintained, properly standardized, the two are going to give you extremely different results, right? The equipment that is properly calibrated will give you reproducible and reliable results over time. Whereas the equipment that is ignored and just sitting on a bench collecting dust is going to give you extremely erratic results. So it's not about having the most expensive or sophisticated equipment. It's also about what you can do to maintain that equipment so that in the long run, your results are reliable, your results are reproducible, and the most important, your results are accurate. Yeah. And the fourth one I would say is training analysts and staffs, providing refresher courses, and really ensuring that you're competent and confident enough to perform the task that you need to do. Right? So these are the 4 main aspects of how you can maintain quality in a laboratory that would in turn lead to more accurate, reliable, and reproducible laboratory results. So some obvious QC failures, especially in a forensic setting, are the following. Number one, I would say, is inappropriate packaging. That goes without saying that that is probably the most important QC failure, because you want to be able to make sure that you are analyzing the same thing that has come from the crime scene. You don't want to lose things on the way, or you don't want to pick things up on the way. That can really have a bigger impact than you think on the interpretation of your results, and it can have a big implication in terms of miscarriage of justice, in terms of the reproducibility of your results, etc. So one very obvious QC failure in forensic science is inappropriate packaging. The second one I would say is leaking samples. Now, leaking samples, not only because it can lead to sample loss, it can also damage labels, it can smudge labels, and it can also contaminate neighboring samples. So those are three implications that leaking samples may have. Similarly, also improper transport, improper storage conditions. If your samples are not stored and it goes moldy, and it's not, the reagents are not stored correctly, all of these can have a bigger impact than you think collectively on the accuracy of your final result. Using expired reagents, you might be surprised with how many times people overlook the expiry date of reagents, but it's just such a simple thing that you can change to ensure that your result is reproducible and your result is accurate. The other one is not using a control can directly affect the reproducibility of your result. And like I said before, poor equipment. So these are some obvious QC failures that I could think of in the back of my head. So now I want you guys to tell me, what are some lesser obvious QC parameters that we might overlook or might fail to consider? It can be anything, absolutely anything. Okay, so I'll just move on to some of the lesser obvious QC parameters. Some of these might be, you might think it's a little over the top, but trust me, it has a really big effect on your final result. So these are some of them that I could think of. Broken glassware. When you're working in a laboratory day to day, you might overlook that your glassware is chipped or your glassware is broken. That can introduce some foreign particles into your analysis that can hinder the analysis, which you don't want. Number two is rusty spatulas. Now, this is something that a lot of laboratories overlook. Rusty spatulas can not only, it's not only a health and safety hazard, but also it can introduce some additional chemicals that can hinder the final result and also give you inaccurate result, because it might interfere with the reagents that you're using, especially, for example, when you're doing blood testing, like presumptive tests for blood, etc. The third one is microbial and moldy growth on equipment, on storage containers, storage racks, especially if you're storing samples for a really long time and you need to revisit those samples. If there is any mold or microbial growth, that can hinder the entire analysis process. So you want to make sure that it is stored in the correct conditions, for example, in dry and the correct temperature as well. The fourth one is contaminated glassware. Again, this might seem very silly, but trust me, not running blanks. If you run a blank on a contaminated glassware, you can see how much contamination there is. For example, if I'm testing nicotine on an auto titrator, and if you do routine testing of nicotine on an auto titrator and the glassware is not properly washed, and I just pick up the glass and run a blank, I can get a really high concentration even though there is no sample in it. So ensuring that your glassware is properly washed with detergent, cleaned and dried with a proper disinfectant is one small step that you can do to really improve the accuracy of your result, right? And the final one is contaminated reagents. If you're using the same pipettes to using the same pipettes and not changing the pipette or not disposing the pipette, and that can lead to contamination. So again, these might seem very silly, but it is adding up to something that we call good laboratory practice. And these are, in my opinion, quite non-negotiable when working in any laboratory, but especially a forensic laboratory. I think I forgot to touch on PPE not meeting standards. So like the laboratory has to meet standards, there are also PPE standards. For example, in the UK, we have the EN regulation for PPE. Likewise, I'm pretty sure in India as well, you have certain standards for PPE as well. So some of the two standards that came to my mind is the ISO 17025, which is for testing and calibration, and 9001, which is quality management systems. So these are the two standards that we follow regularly in our laboratory, and it can be different for different labs, but also these are not the only two standards. There are many standards, and I couldn't touch up on everything, which is why I included two reference materials for you guys to go through. The first one is a book by Sean Doyle. It's a really elaborate book that goes into specific standards for testing, for reporting, for communication, everything. And the second one is an article that was published, and it might really shock you to learn how poor the quality management can be in some forensic laboratories. I also think this is a good research field to go into if you're looking into that as well, because it's a little lesser explored. So that was the end of my presentation. If you guys have any questions, you can ask me. Any questions?
Thank you, ma'am, for this engaging and profound session. I request all the students, if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask them one by one. Also, you can use the message box for your queries.
Ma'am, I had one question.
Yeah, no
So,
problem.
since you're working in a majorly in a cosmetic fields, are there
Mhm.
any particular quality control or quality assurance steps which might be different from the standardized or the generalized steps?
Yeah, so each laboratory has their own personalized quality control standards, and this is because each laboratory may have different funding, may have different equipments, etc. So you can only know once you start working in a laboratory that is personalized, that little errors that happen here and there, you kind of personalize the quality control standards to your own laboratory, right? So we have, for our lab, we have different in-house things that we do that may not happen in some other laboratory. So it really depends on which lab you're working in and the sort of culture that is followed in that laboratory.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we have one question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, what are the career opportunities we can pursue in quality control forensic science in UK?
Yeah, so I did my bachelor's and master's in forensic science, but then I went into quality control because I learned a lot in forensic science that I could use in quality control as well. So you'd be happy to know that forensic science is not a very limiting field. Once you have studied forensic science, you can still venture out to a broader career path. So in the UK currently, you need a 5-year security clearance, which means you need to be staying in the UK for 5 years to pursue a forensic career. So students achieve this through working in other scientific fields where you're not sacrificing on your skills for those 5 years. You're still building those skills for 5 years so that ultimately you can land a job in forensic science, right? So some career opportunities you could go into is like biotech, quality control, teaching is big here, like if you want to go into as a teaching assistant, something like that.
There is one more question by a student. So they would like to know about your BSc and MSc degree. So how you completed, what were the experiences, what all courses or things you took. So could you please elaborate on?
Yeah, so I did my BSc from Jain University. It was a 3-year degree. And I would say there was nothing that I did not learn in those 3 years. It was a very elaborate course, and we had really good professors who are very approachable. So, because of that, I was really able to do well in my master's because I didn't have that sort of knowledge gap that I thought I would because my undergraduate was so elaborate. So I believe that doing your undergraduate in India really helps in doing a master's, especially here in the UK, in terms of knowledge. Also, for master's, we're more research oriented, less about textbook knowledge, and more about self-directed kind of learning. So it does get some time getting used to, but I think once you start and in a month or two, you get used to self-directed learning. So if you are looking at doing a master's abroad, I would say thoroughly scan the course. Also scan the country that you want to look at, the immigration laws, the fees, the weather, all of these little things to consider before you decide to move and pursue a master's abroad.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Also, there's one more question. How do you stay updated with the latest quality control standards and methodologies in your industry?
Yes, so we have yearly refresher courses. So any good laboratory will give the analysts refresher courses because it is easy to get lost in what you're comfortable with and not update your skills. So two refresher courses is number one. And the second one I said that might be surprising is through errors that happen in the laboratory. So when you're working in a QC laboratory, there are consistent human errors that are occurring. And because of this, we are able to stay updated and brainstorm new QC parameters. For anything that happens in the lab, you can put in a QC parameter. Now, this might seem a little over the top, but if it's from through checklists or daily logs, etc., you can put in QC parameter with everything that you're doing. And the third one is through making and updating your SOPs and speaking with senior scientific officers and also subscribing to newsletters from instrumental companies. Like if you're subscribing to newsletters from Metro, Matter Toledo, etc. Like they provide really good newsletters to how you can get updated in like the QC field and testing field.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Also, one person is asking, is there any equivalence degree since you have completed a BSc in India? So I'm not sure about it, but is there any equivalence degree which we can complete? Or should
Sorry,
I type?
what is equivalence degree exactly? What do you mean?
I'll get back to you soon. I'll type it in chat box. We'll proceed to the next question till then.
Yeah.
It is, ma'am, according to you, which country will be the best to pursue the career in forensic science?
Uh, so it really just depends on you. I would say if it's forensic science, probably India, because if you're going abroad, you need to meet a lot of security clearance in terms of how many years you've lived in that country for, and also your visa requirements you need to look at. So if you want to go into forensic science, I would say India. Or if you want to do a bachelor's in forensic science abroad, then it would be a little easier to pursue a forensic career abroad. But if it is other fields that are closely related to forensic science, like a pure science laboratory or a biotech laboratory or a GMP laboratory like the one I'm working in, I would say the UK is pretty good. But before you go abroad anywhere, just make sure you are updated on all of the immigration laws because they are ever changing, as you know. So you never know when something changes. So you just want to be kind of before you jump into something.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am, for the previous answer.
Okay.
The next question we have is, do you have any idea regarding scope of cybersecurity and cyber forensics in United Kingdom?
Yeah, so there is, I have a few friends who are pursuing that. There is a big scope. If you're looking at going into the big fours, of course, there's a big scope there. And also, cybersecurity, not just in terms of forensic science, but also in terms of other closely related fields, I would say there is a scope. Quite a few courses coming up in cybersecurity in the recent years.
Thank you. Coming to my previous question, I confirm. So the student wants to ask you, after you completed your BSc degree in jail, did they make you write any exam for the MSc, or you got a direct approval for the MSc course for in
No,
abroad?
no exam. I just applied directly with my BSc results and my BSc certification. And I only applied to two universities, Strathclyde and King's College London. I got into both, but I decided to go to Strathclyde because the professor felt like but nothing bad about King's. If you want to go there, you can.
Thank you. Uh, this question, uh, there's one more question.
Yeah.
Can you give an example of a challenging quality control issue you have ever faced in the past, and how your team or you have established or resolved it?
Yes. So in I think a few, without giving too much information, like I think a few months ago, because we produced batches in bulk and then we tested in small amounts, there was an oversight about the contamination, like in mixing protocols where there was a lot of contamination found, and obviously it's a big batch, so we cannot see how much contamination is in the entire thing because you're producing 200 liters 300 liters worth of liquid or worth of cosmetics, and then you bottle them up into smaller. To overcome this, the only thing was to appoint more QCs in the laboratory while the production was happening. And another thing is in terms of testing, like it's more of a trial and error. Like sometimes this method might work, or this much sample might work, or this sample not working. So we try it with the sample. So, like I said before, it's more trial and error procedure.
Understood. Understood. Probably one last question.
No
How was
problem.
how was your exposure in your MSc lab experiments during your MSc? How was the
Yeah.
exposure of the lab?
Yeah, so I had really good exposure to laboratory work and independent lab work in my MSc. The labs were well equipped. Most of the labs here are well equipped, and they really let you and trust you enough to work independently on it without supervision. So that really gives you a sort of control and also this excitement to work alone on the instrument. So it gives you that natural curiosity. And in terms of experiments, I would say they did cover a broad spectrum of experiments and also research that stems from that experiment, and also how to present lab reports. So if you had an experiment, you would have some kind of output, right, to that experiment, or some sort of lab report. So the labs are tough, but it was also my favorite part. So I think it's pretty good here in terms of laboratories.
All right, understood. Um, One more question from the student.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, which country has the best scope studying and getting job in toxicology field?
Right. Like I said, it's not about the country, because anytime you go abroad to a country that you're not the citizen of, there are lots of different factors to consider. So I wouldn't say that one is the best country over the other. The UK is very established in terms of forensic science, if that's what you want to go into. But if your ultimate aim is a permanent settlement, then you'll have to look at different things. But if your ultimate aim is to gain knowledge and gain experience, then I would say the UK is a really good country to look at in terms of toxicology. Also India, I would say.
Mm, do the universities of UK have placement with government agency through MSc? That's the question I received.
Yeah. So depends on the university, and also depends on you, because a lot of jobs are landed through independent networking that you do in your day-to-day life on LinkedIn or in conferences during guest lectures, etc. So relying heavily on the university, I wouldn't say is ideal, because the university may or may not have placement. It really depends upon the time and the resources that they have to gather during that particular time, right? So if you are looking into getting a government placement, I know a few people who have, but it was because of their own efforts to go out and make their names well known and do networking on their own. So don't underestimate the power of networking and LinkedIn. If you guys don't already use it, it's a really good platform, and you should start using it.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for patiently
Thank
answering
you.
all our questions.
That's okay. Thank you. I hope I answered. I don't know. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Now I'll forward this platform to Siddhi Pant for a vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Gratitude is the sweetest song of the soul, echoing the melody of appreciation. On this heartful note, I would like to express my deep appreciation to our distinguished guest speaker for gracing us with an insightful lecture today. Your presence and insights have unquestionably enhanced our comprehension and expanded our viewpoints on the quality control in forensic science. Your passion for the subject shone through every word you spoke, serving as an inspiration for us to delve into this domain and explore its complexities further. Your generosity in sharing your expertise with us is truly commendable, and we are immensely grateful for the time and efforts you dedicated to preparing and delivering this lecture. Once again, thank you for your enlightening lecture. We eagerly anticipate the possibility of welcoming you back in the future. Your presence has had a significant impact, and we are sincerely grateful. This session owes its success to the invaluable support and guidance from our esteemed management under the leadership of Principal Reverend Dr. Augustine George. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, Fathers. We would also like to express our thanks to Dr. Callistus Jude and Professor Don Cairo for their encouragement and support in our pursuit of excellence, making programs like this possible. Thank you, sir. The seamless execution of this guest lecture is credited to the dedicated faculty members of Department of Forensic Science. We extend our thanks to all our respective teachers for their coordination and hard work, with special appreciation to Mr. Mayank Raibode for ensuring the technical success of the session. A big thank you also goes out to all the students of BSc and MSc Forensic Science for being an engaged and attentive audience. Your participation is greatly appreciated. As we draw this program to a close, we kindly invite everyone to join us for the college anthem.
Golden days, sun in the rising east, lights up a light divine, fills knowledge in our minds. Laurels and the book make us sublime. With the mighty Lord, we soar high on the bedrock of faith. Joy and peace, sprawl our hearts and minds. On we march our goals as a beacon for the world, with a passion for our growth and a love for humankind, united and strong in excellence on the bedrock of faith.
I request the participants to turn on their videos for a photo screenshot of the session. Thank you, one and all. The feedback form link will be shared with the participants. Kindly fill the same.
Thank you, Krishnendu.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Students, if you still have some questions, you can ask. though the session is officially over. Thank you, Krishnendu. I think they have asked enough of questions also.
That's okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
appreciate you staying. Waking up early to be with our students.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we hope to interact more in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank
And with
Thank
your
you,
permission,
sir.
can I end the meeting?
Thank you. Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you.